Hello, everyone, and welcome in. My name is Bryce Koon here on the Crowded Booth, and tonight we take a look back at week number 4, some of the biggest storylines that we saw, myself and Will Manis. And we're going to talk about the ACC too. We're going to talk about 3 different games. We're going to talk about the ACC. What is it? And I hope Will stays around for this portion of the show. We will take a look at the best bets, but we'll do that. And before we get started, though, obviously, you know that our show is a 3-man crew of myself, Will Manis, and Ralph Leary. And Ralph is not going to be on the show tonight, and we just wanted to kind of relay our thoughts and prayers are with the Learys and their family. And truthfully, one of our biggest fans that has literally watched this show ever since we started doing the show. Ralph's grandmother passed away this morning, and so prayers with Ralph and his family as they go through that time. You guys know Ralph, big teddy bear, and so if you're in the Discord, you shout him out on social media, tell him you're thinking about him, tell him you're praying about him, and I don't know if he's watching, but he's tonight, but he's a good dude, and we're praying for him. And shout out to Miss Patsy, who obviously would comment, watch the show, and obviously was a big piece of what we were doing here. So shout out Miss Patsy. This one's for you. Let's go. Crowded Booth. We're talking college football.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Well, happy Monday, everyone, and let's talk college football. Bryce Koon and Will Manis along with you for the ride here. I don't know how I address that, Will, as like we're this like 5 o'clock ride along show. Welcome you on your way home. Maybe you're listening to this on Tuesday when you get home. That might be what you might be doing that. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting when people say, "Why did he say that?" And there's 27 seconds of the show we'll never get back. But Will, how you doing on this fine evening? I got a lot of things I want to ask you before we really get into the content. But first off, you're rocking the hat. You were in the building last night for Sunday Night Football. I'm not mad. I'm not that mad. I mean, obviously, I wanted to win the game as a Falcons fan, but it's like I'll preface it with this. Hillary looked at me, my wife Hillary. She said, "Bryce, do you remember last year when we watched the Bills and Chiefs play late in the season? The Bills went on that run, and we looked at it and we said, like, the Falcons aren't even in this sphere. Like the football that we're watching, they're not even there. Well, they didn't win, but they're there, and they probably should have won if the referees would call a pass interference on Kyle Pitt with a Kyle Pitts play. But your thoughts on the game?"
Yeah, obviously brutal call. Tough way to finish that game off. But man, the Falcons are right there. I'm not going to use that B word. I've taken a lot of heat for using the B word already this year. So I'm not going to use that one. But the Falcons are close, man, and it's fun. I mean, the game was a ton of fun. 2 really good football teams going at it. But this could be a hot take, but this is kind of how I feel about the Chiefs offense. It's kind of boring.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a lot of check downs. It's a lot of, I mean, they get 4 yards of play, which you get 4 yards of play, you get a first down every 3 downs. So it works. It's effective. It's good. But they don't really have that pop. It doesn't feel like where the Falcons, their offense, it's more inconsistent, but they can pop you for that big play. Kyle Pitts had the 50-yard reception, nearly had a touchdown. Tough finish to it. Just that last play. I've had a lot of conversations with people about it today. You knew Bijan Robinson's getting the ball. He's the best player, maybe on the field when the Falcons have the ball. And he was definitely going to get the ball. I think Zach Robinson maybe got a little too cute with it, going split backs, which nobody does anymore. With Algier on the field, and you kind of think you need half a yard. Maybe you go Tyler Algier there, but is what it is. Falcons are right there. I mean, if you told me the Falcons were going to start 1-2, that's probably about what was expected. Not the order that they got it in, but that's probably what was expected.
Obviously, in a big one this upcoming weekend against the Saints, which shout out, you were in the building. I know that, look, Mercedes-Benz is, and especially for Sundays, is known as like a haven for other fans to take over. But it did look like the Falcons did very well in terms of attendance.
Yeah, it was hard to tell. It almost felt like 50-50. Although the Falcons fans were definitely louder, so it probably wasn't exactly 50-50. But it's also hard to tell because Chiefs fans, they like to wear red too. So it was kind of like everybody was wearing red. It was hard to tell, but it was fun. It was a fun environment. It's so much better. The Falcons are good. I went to a Falcons game last year, and a couple of reasons why it was bad. One, it was New Year's Day, which is still like, why are we playing, or like January 2nd, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Why are we playing NFL games on this day? And it was the Cardinals, and it was after Kyler Murray was injured. So I was watching two backup quarterbacks with a like a 10% crowd because it was New Year's Day. But last night was much more fun.
Yeah, no, it was fun, and I'm excited for next week, especially living down here in Louisiana. The Saints maybe fell back down to earth a little bit this past weekend, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. Two good ball clubs. NFC South's kind of sneaky good outside of Carolina.
It's very competitive. Hey, Carolina smacked around the Raiders. So
Andy Dalton's back. Andy Dalton's back. But this is not an NFL podcast.
Nope.
It isn't, and I don't know if there's a market for us in that. But
hey, now that the Falcons are good, you sound more open to talking about the NFL.
I've already talked about it more in the 4 minutes than I have on the previous 365 days on this show. So yes, you're exactly right. Alex says Army Navy AAC title game.
Yes,
we're all about that.
We'll get to that.
Playoffs.
We'll get to that.
Falcons are up for another word. Excited if the Falcons behave the last two play calls. Dr. Bob says that he's here. Glad the Saints playing a dome. September afternoon football in Louisiana is blistering and brutal. I want to play on this for a second. Will, I don't know if you saw my tweet that caught obviously some wind. People were literally falling out, passing out at LSU. It was brutal. I don't know how much media rights people pay attention to that kind of stuff, but I don't think they should have games in South Louisiana in September at 3:30. But I will say this: for all the people that passed out, yeah, they probably had a ton of liquid courage to help them get there. But my daughter made it through halftime and then fell asleep on the way out. So
hey, I was going to say you should be very happy with how your Saturday went, having Addie there for the first time.
It was a ton
sounded like she was a trooper.
She
got a tough one.
And she was the darling of the section too. They couldn't believe she was there. She loved it. It was a good time, and obviously LSU got a fun win too in the process. All right, so we're going to talk obviously college football. We're going to talk about kind of three games that we took away that are big storylines. And Will, let's talk about that ACC game last because it'll go right into the topic of conversation. So let's go first though. Your bread and butter.
Let's get the ugly one out of the way first.
I want to tee this one up for you because I imagine you. Well, okay. First off, before we get here, I was texting Will. I said, "Hey, did you watch Hugh Freeze's press conference on Monday?" I said, "Did you watch it?" And he goes, "I haven't yet," or so. I don't know what you were doing. And then you proceeded to say that Big Justice, the social media icon, you want to fight him. So can you give us a quick review of how bad a chicken bake is and what actually is this thing? Because I will preface it. I thought that a chicken bake was like this, I don't know, like a little like breadstick with like a buffalo chicken breadstick. I didn't really know what this thing was. Like that sounds pretty good.
That would be good.
Tell us what it is.
So yeah, Costco. It's a Costco exclusive. My girlfriend Katie, she's a Costco member, and now I'm getting confused looks talking about Costco. I tried the chicken bake today. Not good. If you know Big Justice and AJ from TikTok, the Costco guys, big doom. Don't listen to them. It's hard to describe. You know, I was kind of expecting it to be kind of like similar to like a calzone type thing, at least filled with cheese.
Yeah.
You know, it's like ground chicken with like, it's like you just boil chicken. Like it's not good.
There's really no flavor there. It's just like,
no. There's a little bit of, once you get about halfway down, you find some bacon, or maybe that was just the one that I had. You find a little bit of bacon, so it gets a little bit better. But it's a doom. Big doom.
That's getting clipped. We're putting that on social media right after the show. All right, so that's Will's take. Now, we were talking about obviously Auburn and Hugh Freeze's press conference. Let's kind of start with this game. I do want to give props here because no one wanted to win this football game. This was one that both teams tried to give away, and ultimately Arkansas just couldn't give it away enough. Sam Pittman, let's talk about Sam Pittman, Arkansas first here, Will. Sam Pittman's saving his job. And, you know, Nick Saban said on College Game Day a couple weeks ago that he thinks Arkansas will probably be the most improved team in the SEC. With how the SEC has shaken out through the first 4 weeks of the season, I don't know. That's not crazy because they look competitive, kind of, and they could win against some mediocre to bad teams.
So I miss Nick Saban saying that, but I did hear him say that Auburn might be the most improved team in the SEC. I think he said that week one, maybe. So is he just saying everybody's going to be more improved? I don't know.
Well, you're always right if you say cover the basis of everything, and then you can always
Right,
pull back the other.
exactly. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Nobody wanted to win this game. There was, I think, 3 consecutive plays or 3 out of 4 plays. There would an interception was thrown by both teams. Auburn did it twice. It was one of the ugliest games ever, including that 3-2 thriller against Mississippi State, whatever year that was. This one was up there with it. You know, I've talked a lot about it, obviously. I think Sam Pittman probably saved his job. He at least will get through the season at this point now, and might get another one if he wants it. I mean, they're much improved. They're extremely well coached, extremely well. I mean, Travis Williams on the defensive side, I knew he was going to be great because ex-Auburn player, ex-Auburn linebackers coach did a really good job. Went with Gus Malzahn to UCF to coordinate their defense. Had a really strong defense down there, and he's doing it again at Arkansas. I mean, had a great game plan, knew how to attack whoever was going to play quarterback. It worked. It didn't matter. Offensively, Bobby Petrino, they look confident, competent on offense. I think they're lacking some at the quarterback position, but Taylor Green, he's a gamer for sure. He's really good at extending plays. He burned Auburn several times on 3rd and long. Auburn struggled to get off the field on defense. But Auburn's defense is the highlight of the team. I mean, you give up 24 points at home, you probably expect to win that game.
Yeah.
Especially against Arkansas, who coming in, you're thinking, man, we should be able to put up some points against Arkansas's defense. They've struggled. They struggled against UAB coming into this one, but that shows it doesn't matter. Any given Saturday, it doesn't matter. But man, we talked about it yesterday. The job DJ Durkin's done. I mean, I was a little hesitant when Hugh Freeze made the hire. It's kind of like, what really has he done? I mean, he had a good year at Ole Miss. He goes to Texas A&M with more talent, and they struggled on defense. So what are we going to get? And he's done a really, really nice job, I think, with a roster that is far below almost any offense that Auburn's going to play all year compared. And done a really, really good job. I think his game plans have been good. His adjustments have been excellent adjustments. Saw it against Cal, saw it in this game too, really slowing down Arkansas's offense. I think they went right down the field and scored on the opening drive. Or they stalled out and missed a field goal, but did really good. Gavin, he's exactly right. Big Dirk, which is a new nickname I haven't heard, needs the Broyles Award. Yeah, he should be up for it. He should be up for it. But man, it's frustrating, and I told you this. It's frustrating to have another offensive-minded head coach and your offense just be so anemic. I mean, how can Auburn like can't seem to get out of its own way on offense?
Yeah, it's offensively, and Dr. Bob says this: Auburn's officially in the curse of the Bo Nix territory when it comes to quarterback play. Well, the best way to categorize Auburn's offense right now is anemic. I mean, it's completely anemic. They cannot get out of their own way. They're forcing too many errors. And I was texting you during the game. I mean, about this. The blame cannot be put on Hank Brown. Like Hank Brown is the least likely person. I mean, I understand he didn't perform, but like one, we can all argue he should have never been put in this spot to begin with, of having to play meaningful reps in week 5 of the season, week 4 of the season. Peyton Thorne probably should not be playing meaningful reps. But this is the thing. Auburn knew they had a quarterback problem coming into the season. And so it's just not a surprise that this is happening, maybe to the extent. But, Will, you're not surprised. I mean, this is something that you felt like you knew was going to happen. I don't know what the fix is. I want to know your thoughts and on Hugh Freeze's comments about, what he said after post game, and then kind of today when he was asked the question. And I'm a psycho. I sent you the entire transcript in a text message. It was a downloadable text message. But he essentially said, and the question was posed, what is the identity of this offense? Which I think was a great question by whatever media member asked it. What would you say it is? And he said, I would say it is what it is and what we're doing. And okay, so is that bad? I mean, it's bad. Like you can't be any other way about this than this is a bad offense.
Yeah. After the game, obviously you've seen it firsthand how emotional I can be after and during games because I am a fan. and even on Sundays. But I did a little bit of digging today, considering what he said and looking at the numbers and everything. And he's right. The offense, you look at the numbers, is not bad. It's just Auburn can't take care of the ball. Auburn's 131st out of 132 teams in the country in turnover margin. I mean, Auburn's at -10, I think, turnover margin. And the defense, they've created a couple turnovers. They picked off Taylon Green. Really nice interception by Kyan Lee, which I think he really needed for his confidence. He struggled at the cornerback position to start the year, but Hugh Freeze is right, right in this regard that the offense is effective. I think he's not doing a great job, and whoever's calling the plays, Derek Nix, the offensive coordinator, or Freeze, whoever it is, not really playing to the strengths of this offense, which I think is running the football. You've got an offensive line that is not very good, but the one thing they do well is run block. They do get after it. They can get downhill. They can create running lanes for Jarquez Hunter, and Jarquez Hunter is an all SEC level running back. Hugh Freeze said after the game, well, I know we're running the ball. If you're really running the ball, you have a running back like Jarquez Hunter, he needs to get it 20, 25 times. I mean, and you look at him, he can be a bell cow type back. He's not a little scat back. He'll lay you out in the hole. So that'll get clipped too by somebody, I'm sure.
It will.
But it's the RPO, and what do quarterbacks want to do? They want to throw the ball. If you give them the option, they're going to want to throw it, which is not a surprise. But again, it comes back on him as the head coach. Knowing quarterback was a problem. Everybody thought Auburn could upgrade at quarterback in the portal. They chose not to. And if they didn't, they should have done more on the offensive line, which that's where it starts. I mean, when Auburn drops back to pass, these offensive linemen are getting pushed around, getting pushed right back into the quarterback. So, it's not all on Peyton Thorne. It's not all on Hank Brown. Hank Brown missed a few throws. We've had throws hit off Cam Coleman, the all-world Auburn wide receiver. Ball's hitting off his hands and being intercepted. So it's been some bad luck, but there has been some real bad decision-making too. So it's a collection of everything right now.
Well, and you mentioned a collection of everything. And I think one of the biggest keys to that is that ultimately the scapegoat, or who this is going to fall on, is Hugh Freeze as the de facto play caller, whatever you want to, call him. I mean, I know there's Derek Nixon in the equation, but this is Hugh Freeze. Well, here's the thing. It's either Hugh Freeze when he wins, or it's not Hugh Freeze when he loses. That was kind of a point of contention last year. But where do you go from here? Because I think I am officially going to stamp it here on September 23rd, 2024. You've been saying this since June, and I'm going to say here, this is not a good football team. And I don't think that there's something magically that's going to happen. Like Brian Kelly said this, and this is the same adage I'll use for Auburn fans. When Kelly talked about the defense and struggles, he has said there's nobody else walking through the door. There's no midseason trade. There's no midseason free agent acquisition. Auburn has who they're going to have. So unless this staff can work some type of miracle to turn it around, this is a bad football team that's going to lose a decent amount more of games. Well, when you look at that schedule, in the preseason, okay, we did bold predictions. I said, could Auburn challenge for a playoff spot? Could they get to 9 wins? Feasibly, you would think 9-3, you're challenging for one of those final playoff spots as an SEC team. That has gone from where I think maybe you kind of sat in the 7-5 to 8-4 category. We have to have a realistic conversation about this team missing out on a bowl game, fourth straight losing season, which shouldn't fly. It won't fly, but I will say this. I don't think it's going to be enough to fire him, but I think that Hugh Freeze is going to get the Billy Napier treatment heading into year 3. That's kind of my thought.
You've heard me say it. I've said it on the show the last couple of weeks. Auburn is in a similar situation that Florida was in last year. You've got to have proof of concept on the field. All the recruits and all the recruiting insiders that get told things off the record that all about say that Auburn fans shouldn't be panicking about this recruiting class, that everybody that Auburn has committed is very solid, which is a good sign. I don't know that Florida had that last year. I didn't follow that part of their situation very closely. And I'm hoping that Auburn, that they can just keep this class together, because it is going to be a really good class if they can keep it together.
Yeah.
But like Brian Kelly said, nobody's coming through that door to make any differences. But I think if the play calling gets tweaked a little bit offensively, I mean, there's basically it looks like there's no screen passes in this playbook. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I don't think the play calling is really putting the players and the strengths of the offense in a position to get in a rhythm and make plays early, which is why they get off to a slow start, and it just makes it harder the longer the game goes on. Maybe throw some packages for screen passes, run the ball more, take the option out of the quarterback's hands a little bit earlier in the game, because everybody looks like Peyton Thorne, Hank Brown, whoever's playing quarterback, looks like they're pressing early in the game to make that big play and get off to a good start. You just need to just chip away and get a few first downs and get momentum going, get confidence rolling. And right now I'm going to put that on the coaches. And whoever's calling plays. It's disjointed. It's a mess is the best way to put it. And you talk about this team could miss a bowl game. I said it after the Cal game. I think you laughed at me, but you're not going to laugh at me when I say it now. I don't see a winnable game on the schedule the rest of the year. And that includes Louisiana Monroe. And that includes Vanderbilt, who took Missouri to overtime in Columbia on Saturday.
That includes General Maximus Booty. That is that young man's name, playing quarterback for the Warhawks of Louisiana Monroe. No, I'm with you. Sorry, my wife just walked in with my daughter, who is bawling her eyes out, and that threw me for a loop. But anyways, can finish that thought.
I don't see an easily winnable game on the schedule. Everything's going to be a struggle because it's partially because I don't know what I'm going to get from this offense. If they could consistently do something, and I think it can be run the ball, but they just are not. They're just not doing it. But I think they could and I'm putting it on the play callers.
I talked with someone in and around that Auburn program in the preseason, and I think we had texted about this. And I said, "What do you think that the output is of this team? Like where can they achieve?" And this person told me, if things hit right, and obviously the quarterback position was going to have to be one of those, 8 to 9 wins and challenging for a playoff spot. And that's kind of where I gathered my opinion. And I think it's just safe to say that the looming issue that everyone knew coming out of that bowl game against Maryland, I think the frustrating part about it is that it's reared its ugly head. And it's like, well, we all knew this. Like everyone knew this. And I don't even think, Will, that this is a hindsight is 2020 thing. This was an issue. People inside that program thought this was going to be an issue. That, to me, that's solely on the coaching staff. That's solely on the shoulders of Hugh Freeze. I don't think that you can pass that off to anybody else.
To cut him a little bit of slack, and I think I have said it on here, the coaches and recruiting staffers, everybody, they're still learning the new environment that is college football. I mean, if you've got a guy coming in there on a transfer coming in there saying, well, I want $1 million to play quarterback here. And you're like, oh, are you $1 million quarterback? Like what is $1 million quarterback? What is that? So do you want to commit that money to somebody and they be a bust and then you'll never get that $1 million again? Or do you play safe with what you have? And I kind of think that was part of the thought process, which, obviously after this game, Peyton Thorne should be the starting quarterback. I don't know that you go back to Hank Brown, at least probably not against Oklahoma. And Peyton Thorne should be better. I mean, this roster is good enough to win 6 or 7 games. It is. Yeah. And this coaching staff, I think, is good enough to get them in that position. They're just not doing it right now. They haven't done it the first 4 games, and that's why they're sitting at 2-2.
Yeah. Tough times in Auburn, and they're in a bad spot. They're in a bad spot. All right, let's talk about the next team that obviously Auburn, or the next game Auburn's going to play this team real quick. I like to talk about the winners because I've got a lot of thoughts on Tennessee. But let's talk Tennessee, Oklahoma, what we kind of saw. And obviously the big news, Matt Zenitz reported that Brent Venables made the announcement during his weekly show, this week, that Michael Hawkins will start against Auburn. So they're going to go with the freshman.
Well, I'll tell you this. Get ready for 80-90% completion percentage, 400 yards, and 5 touchdowns out of him because backup quarterbacks feast against Auburn.
So Hawkins is going to start against Auburn. By the way, I will tell you this right now. Jackson Arnold will not play another meaningful snap for Oklahoma. It's done. It's over with. That's my take. I think that this kid's going to leave because I don't think that the way that you cannot go back to him After literally benching him in one of your biggest games on the schedule. Like regardless who I know Oklahoma plays Texas, we all know what this game meant. I mean, we all knew this. Arnold did not play well, and you benched him. I was surprised by that. To me, that felt like a knee jerk reaction. Now I would need to kind of go back in and watch some of his earlier games. He hasn't been bad, but it's crazy. And Gavin says this: they told Dylan Gabriel to leave for him. We talked about this all off season. This was deemed the Jackson Arnold era, and you told a pretty good quarterback that will be drafted. I don't think he's been one of the top quarterbacks, but he'll be an NFL draft quarterback to leave. And this is the crazy part. Will, let's talk about Oklahoma for a second, because Auburn knew they had a problem coming in. Oklahoma thought they had this figured out, and they're in a bad spot because unless Hawkins, and I don't know how much you can take away if he dices up Auburn's defense, unless Hawkins shows that he can legitimately play. And man, this season just got really cut short for Oklahoma and their fan base.
Yeah, it's to me a tougher, like you said, it's a tougher situation than Auburn's because they thought they had the answer. I don't know. I mean, I just went back and just watched the highlights of this game. I didn't watch, play for play because, honestly, that final score and from what I saw was about what I expected. Oklahoma's defense is really good. I mean, they held what might be the best offense in the country to 25 points. And you thought if they held them under 30 that they might win this game, even with the problems offensively Oklahoma had coming in. So I don't know, but it's been 4 games. We kind of know who everybody is now. Man, that game in Auburn next week's going to be ugly. I'm afraid. I don't know who's going to win. Both teams might be just bad. Might just be bad. But I'll say this about Oklahoma: they found ways to win games so far this year, whereas Auburn really hasn't. So, little preview to that game there, but Tennessee is legit. I think everybody knows that now. I don't know that that's a question. I put them in the playoff, and I might have been a little too conservative. I've been a little too conservative. This is an SEC championship contender. This is a top 4 playoff seed contender, and if they're not, they might very well be the 5 or 6 seed, depending on how it shakes out. And again, we still got to see them play Georgia. Even with Georgia's struggles, I think we'll learn a lot more about Tennessee coming up. They still got to play Alabama. But man, Tennessee. Yeah. And I said it after their bowl game last year against Iowa when Nico started. Nico's the real deal. You love to scoff at Iowa, but they've got a great defense. And Nico looked like a seasoned veteran against them in his first start in that bowl game. And going to Oklahoma, that's a tough place to go. His first road game and handled it tremendously.
Yeah. I'll add this in kind of my thoughts on Tennessee. I'm not going to overreact to one game and say Tennessee's winning the SEC or Tennessee's winning the national championship. Here's the 2 biggest takeaways from what I think about Tennessee, though, through 4 games and then obviously playing against Oklahoma. That Oklahoma team has a very good defense, like you alluded to. And the biggest thing is that I felt like the whole game watching this, that Heupel and especially Nico, they were just even keeled. Because in a moment like that on the road, an emotional environment for your head coach, you could press. You could try to make the big play. Oklahoma did a good job of limiting Nico in terms of what they do, but I also think Tennessee kind of just felt like we don't have to go put up 55 to win this game. Yeah. I'm impressed with the fact that they didn't try to push the envelope too far and lose a game, because that's how teams like, with a young quarterback like that would lose a game. You try to do too much. I think Nico's probably the most God-given talented quarterback in the country. In terms of raw, pure talent, he's probably the best one. I'm not saying that he's better than Carson, all these kind of things. I don't know. We'll have to see what that looks like. I just think in terms of the skill set that he brings to the table, he might be the most pure talented quarterback in the country. The second part to this, Will, it has evaded Josh Heupel his entire time at Tennessee. They've had it in spurts, but in the big moments, it's been the defense that has just been absent from a Josh Heupel-led Tennessee team. I am really intrigued with the fact that obviously, everyone talked about they might have the number 1 pick in the preseason. I think we've cooled down on that conversation. I think
Yeah.
just in terms of what positional needs might be, but that kid, they've got some dudes. This defense for Tennessee, that's what puts them into a national title contender type of picture. Because this is a really complete team that plays very balanced football, and they play off of each other very, very well.
Yep.
I think that that's something we've seen. They took NC State to the woodshed, which I don't know if NC State's really as bad as we think they are. I don't know what they are. We're going to talk about that later. But then I don't know. I'm impressed. Those are the two key takeaways. Nico is wiser beyond his years, and that this team plays very good complementary football, which we couldn't really say about Tennessee in the big moments in previous seasons.
Yeah, and to me, the biggest thing about them is they know who they are, and they seem to
Yeah.
have known who they are since the opening kickoff of the season, which is rare and surprising, and that's what really makes them scary. You talk about that defense. We saw them really turn the corner last year. Think back to that Texas A&M game. They shut them down. That was similar score line to this one for most of that game, if not the whole game. They run the ball, which nobody really expected from Josh Heupel when he came in, and his first season with Hendon Hooker. They're scary. They're scary,
Yeah.
and you know where they do it. And Sam's gonna love this, and he's heard me say it a million times. They win the line of scrimmage. They win the line of scrimmage. They've got in my personal opinion, only from what I've seen, the best defensive line coach in the country, and maybe of the last 10, 15 years, and Rodney Garner. Everywhere that dude goes, he has a nasty defensive line that wins every single snap and is 2-3 deep at every position. It starts up front, and Tennessee, they're not a finesse team like a lot of people thought Josh Heupel would bring in. They have been tough on both sides of the ball. They don't back down. They showed it in this game. And they just do what they have to do to win. And they're really good at all phases. And I think as we see more and more this year, they're going to lean on that running game. They've got a great quarterback in Nico, but I don't think they're as talented at wide receiver as they were last year. So they'll have to lean on the run more, but they do a really, really good job with it. And they're not going anywhere. They're going to stay in the top 10, maybe the rest of the season.
And obviously for people that maybe didn't tune in for some reason, you see the score 25-15, you're probably like, well, what in the world are you guys talking about? This was not this is the biggest 10-point blowout I've ever seen in my life. Because this game was not close. In terms, it never felt like Tennessee was really going to lose it. And this is a good comment too. Sam says Tennessee won this game in the first half. Heupel was impressive in his game plan after going to second and third string tackles. We talked about that last week. Lance Hurd not available on both ends of the O-line. They decided to run the ball and just use the clock. They did. And Sam, I think that speaks to, and kind of your second comment, or your last comment down there. Oh my bad, Will, you throw it up there. Is, Heupel's won 2 games where his offense has scored less than 30 points. A&M last year, Oklahoma this year. He's evolving as a coach in front of our eyes. I know that we did earlier in the year, Will, me, you, and Ralph did kind of these top 10 coaches. I don't remember if any of us had Heupel in that top 10.
I don't think we did.
I think he's a top 10 coach in college football.
Yes.
Through 4 weeks. And that might be, maybe someone comes back and, it's going to be hilarious. Let's say Tennessee gets blown out by Georgia or somebody like that. And, well, y'all are morons. I mean, well, there's a lot of teams that get blown out by Georgia. So it is what it is. But I think he is. And I think it's time also. We'll finish with this, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Am I crazy for thinking that it's time to really start thinking about, we've put 2 offensive play callers on this pedestal for the past 5 years, Lane Kiffin and Lincoln Riley. They've done great job. Is it time that we add Josh Heupel to that? I understand that he's maybe younger in his head coaching tenure, but in terms of like what Sam is saying, Saturday just showed me it's not, we got to go, for lack of better words, balls to the wall for 60 minutes and just go run down somebody's throat. No, like, we can play our style game and we can ease on and off the gas pedal and still beat teams. That might be, in my opinion, the most impressive thing. So am I crazy? Can I put them up there, or is it too soon?
Absolutely. And for me, it goes back to, like I just said, that team knows what they are.
Yeah.
They know what they're good at. They know what they do well. And he does a better job than anybody, at least through the first 4 games of the season, at putting that offense in position to plays to their strengths. He plays to their strengths. And that's what makes a great play caller.
Yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. Tennessee, very good football team. Oklahoma, probably not a good football team, and we'll get to see that in Auburn on Saturday. I'm just glad that Auburn finally gets to finish out this home slate. Can they stop doing this? Like it's so why do they do this? Where Auburn plays like the first month and a half at home, and then plays like 2 more games at home the rest of the year.
I like to put the blame on Georgia, but that's probably unfair. When
we might be a little bit far away from that though. Now I do know what you mean by that, but I think
when Missouri and Texas A&M joined the conference, it messed with scheduling. Because Auburn wanted to keep Auburn wants to make sure they have a home game in November, mostly for recruiting, which is very smart. And it used to be Georgia and then Alabama, and they would alternate home and away, but back in 2013, when the conference expanded, they changed it. And Auburn tried to get them to change. They wouldn't do it. So they said, okay, can we move the game earlier in the year? And that's what it's come. That's what they did. And that's part of the reason for the schedule. Like next year, it'll be the opposite. I mean, Auburn will play their cupcakes at home early in the year, and then they'll go on the road for their conference games and get like 4 straight conference games at home to end the season.
Yeah, no, you're right. All right, well, we're going to take a little bit different turn here. We're not going to specifically talk about Clemson, North Carolina State. Let's just talk about the ACC in general because it does go along with what we talked about. So, what is this conference? I mean, I had someone comment. I went live last night and talked about Georgia Tech, Louisville, and how essentially the takeaway is that hey, Louisville is probably what they were against lesser competition. They just needed to showcase it against somebody. They showcased it against what I believe to be a middle tier ACC team, and that's Georgia Tech. They do play Notre Dame, I believe, this weekend, so that's going to be another test. But in totality here, it feels like it's Clemson and Miami. NC State, I don't know what in the world I have zero clue. Ralph with one of the worst picks of all time in terms of the playoff, and that's okay, Ralph. We still love you for that.
It's all right. When I go 0-12 in best bets, I think they'll equal each other.
Maybe. I want to go a hand up situation because you and I've got hand up. We both need to put it up there. Pitt and Boston College are competitive. And
how about that? How about that tweet? Do you have that tweet? Can you throw it up for the people? It's the ACC records since 2018. And Pitt is what, 4th or 5th in wins?
Which I'll say this: we've never said that Pitt has not been good. I just didn't think they were going to be good this year. Eli Holstein has been very good for them,
and we just don't like Pat Narduzzi.
Yeah, he wouldn't shake my guy Jeff Collins' hand. That's the problem. But let's talk about this. Well, I mean, I'm looking at the standings right here. Okay, so here are the undefeated teams in the ACC. Are you ready for this? Mm-hmm. Good Lord. And I'm talking about it's Louisville, Virginia, Boston College, Stanford, and Clemson. Okay. Syracuse has 1 loss. Georgia Tech has 2. Florida State has 2 losses. Duke, Miami, Pitt, North Carolina, SMU, Virginia Tech, Cal, NC State, Wake Forest. Or I'm sorry, Virginia Tech, SMU, North Carolina, Pitt, Miami, Duke have not played. And then teams with 1 loss in the conference are Cal, NC State, and Wake Forest. I do think Wake Forest is terrible. So bad that they literally paid Ole Miss to not have to play them again, which is just Wake Forest needs to quit their football program after doing that. That is the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen in my life. What is this conference? I mean, do we think that it's Miami, which they were impressive in that win over USF? I kind of thought that might be a test game, one that they dropped in recent years. What are your thoughts on this conference? Because what is this? What do we make of the ACC through the first 4 weeks? Is the door still open for a 2-loss team to make it to Charlotte? I know a lot of Tech fans are going to want to know that, and a good portion of them have already jumped off the cliff. But just your thoughts on this, because it feels like it's Miami Clemson, and unless those two stump their toe, I mean, maybe Eli Holstein wins the ACC as the starting quarterback for the Pitt Panthers.
Well, I think it's still wide open. I definitely think Clemson or Miami will be there, but I think that second spot is wide open because this conference is chaos. It's nuts. I mean, we watched Syracuse play a really physical, dominant game against Georgia Tech. I mean, nobody's going to want to hear me say this, but the scoreline I don't think really reflected that game. I think the scoreline was pretty generous to Georgia Tech. And credit them for staying in it and sticking in it. But Syracuse handled them really well. And then Stanford comes in across the country on a Friday night and beats them in the Carrier Dome, because I'm not going to call it whatever they sponsors on it now, the Carrier
I don't
Dome.
know what it is. Yeah, Jay Wireless
Um,
or whatever. Yeah,
something. Yeah. Boston College going to Florida State. We know they're a dumpster fire, but they went down to Florida State and beat them. And we've taken a lot of heat for talking bad about Boston College. And Cal, do we know what Cal is? I mean, they went on the road, they beat Auburn, they went on the road, almost beat Florida State this weekend. I don't know that you can count them out. I think the upside for theirs is there for Cal, but we know they're wildly inconsistent. At least they have been under Justin Wilcox. But could they run the table and get there? I think it's still wide open. I think Louisville's a really good team. I think that the ACC, what makes it so strange is it feels like there's 3 or 4 different styles of play in this conference. I mean, you've got some teams that are going to have a really, really strong defense, but not put it together on offense. You've got a lot of teams that have a good offense, but no defense. So it makes it a hard conference to read.
yeah.
Because it could change at any time. Like I watched Clemson firsthand only put up 3 against Georgia, and then they have proceeded to hang like 150 or almost 200 points since that game. So who are these teams? What are these teams? Who are they? What are they? What are they going to be? But I said this to you about Georgia Tech, and we like to focus on them a lot. For the fans that are jumping off the cliff, remember Vegas had this team at 5 wins, right? And you can say what you want about win total betting, but Vegas knows they've got a reason, and we all thought it was crazy, but they've slipped up. The worst thing for Georgia Tech this year, honestly, was beating Florida State, really exceeding expectations in week 0.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's been so tough on the Tech fans. And Tech's a good football team, I think, at least for
they
the ACC.
Don't play complimentary football all the time, like which the whole ACC doesn't.
Exactly. I think they're better than 5 wins. I think they're definitely a bowl team. And I think you can say that about the whole of the ACC. SMU, we still got to see a lot from them, although they spanked TCU this weekend. But Florida State comes to their place. That'll be an interesting game. I don't know. I mean, even for the newcomers, like, who are these teams? We thought Stanford and Cal were not going to be very good, and they've won games nobody expected them to win. We thought SMU would be really good. They've struggled, and they've had to change quarterbacks. That's the theme of this conference.
Did we have on our bingo card that Stanford and Clemson would be facing off on September 28th in a battle of ACC unbeatens? No, we didn't have that. I mean, I think that we kind of sit here and this conference is not easy to predict. This conference is ever changing. I mean, I don't know how you could put a pin in it. And this is the thing too about it. I mean, like, we think Miami is good. Okay. Cam Ward looks good. I mean, he does really look good. But I'm hesitant to put it out there that they're a national title contender, because I don't know if it's going to be they're just beating up on a bunch of mid teams or they're actually that good. Now, do I think that they could be the ACC's representative? I said that back in the preseason, and that looks pretty good right now. But Clemson might have found something. Also, too, was on that given day, and you said this, 40 minutes ago, on that given day, was Georgia just clicking on all cylinders and Clemson couldn't stop it? Like, sometimes you just have a bad day. And I think we're going to see a lot of that in this conference. Whereas if you're just not having a good day, you're probably going to drop a game that you shouldn't lose to. Like, I don't think you got to watch the Georgia Tech Louisville game. Georgia Tech shot themselves in the foot. They could have won the football game, but they come out of it as Louisville out-executed them. And I think the best way to describe this conference, Miami and Clemson might be able to roll the ball out there and beat anybody. I don't think that the 14 or 13 or however many teams are in this conference can do that. You literally have to. You can't just show up and play. You have to literally. You have to show up and play. You can't just show up and expect to win. So I think that's where this conference is. There's really not a lot of complimentary football being played, and who knows? I mean, we sit here, near October, and I think it's going to be Clemson, Miami in an ACC title game, but it could be. Imagine Stanford and Cal having to fly all the way from the West Coast to Charlotte for an ACC title game. That would be hilarious.
That would be hilarious. I think you hit the nail on the head. There's two teams that can probably roll the ball out there and beat anybody in Clemson and Miami, and we've already seen examples that doesn't work for everybody else. I think Syracuse had a taste of that on Friday night against Stanford. They thought, who's Stanford? We're Syracuse. We take things personally up here. Don't act like you don't know me. Florida State, we thought their roster could just roll the ball out there and beat anybody, and I think that they played into that a lot, and that's why they started 0-3. I didn't watch a ton of the game against Cal, but what a little bit I did see, they played a little bit with a chip on their shoulder. They're definitely not what we thought they would be, but they looked a little bit more physical to me on both sides of the ball and just found a way to win that game. It's impossible to predict. And Georgia Tech, I think they personify it really well. I mean, it's blown my mind. I'm still mind blown by it that they own North Carolina. I would have never expected that. And they're a whole nother mess. Georgia Tech.
You can't give up 70 points to a bye game. I mean, you just can't ever do that.
No, you can't. Georgia Tech shouldn't have beat Miami last year, but they did. And Miami has to come to Atlanta, this season. And we've seen what Georgia Tech can do offensively.
Especially
can get ugly for Miami. Yeah. So
I don't know.
It's nuts.
I look at the rest of this conference schedule and you think you have an idea of what it could look like, but then you just don't know. And I think there's just, like I said, there's just not enough complementary football being played in this conference to really give an accurate prediction. We think, like we said, we think Miami and Clemson are those two teams. Now, this is going to be the interesting part of it too, because we did see this, Will, with Clemson really kind of post Deshaun Watson years when they were kind of teetering towards maybe not being in the national sphere as much as they were during that incredible run they had. They really benefited from playing in a weak conference because when they got to the playoff, they were getting steamrolled. I think that I will say this on paper, the talent at Miami can compete with teams in the playoffs. I just don't know if they're going to be battle tested. And I just don't know. I don't know how much resistance they'll be met with.
I don't think you can say that the ACC is the same as it was, 7-8 years ago. I think the conference has raised its level big time, but to be more competitive, be more physical, but
which causes like we're not saying I'm not trying to sit here and say the ACC sorry. I think that there's just it's gone from being, hey, there's 2 or 3 teams that are really good and everyone's complete dog water to now there's 2 teams that are good, but everyone else is kind of in this middle tier and no one's really separating themselves. So
you've got a conference of 16 teams and you've probably got 12, 13 of them that'll probably make a bowl game. That's a strong conference. That's a strong conference.
Yeah. There's just not a lot of elite teams in this conference. Elite teams that get out there and play. I know a lot of Tech fans will love to hear that word. Yeah, North Carolina gave up 70 to James Madison. James Madison's not good. And that's awful. That's absolutely terrible.
Hey, got to get off the field on money down.
Got to love it. You know who's not making money? And that's this guy right over here in the hat as we kind of transition to the final segment of tonight's show. We look at our best bets. And Will, this is – I'm not showing yours yet. Let's go to mine. You know what? I had the right idea. Boston College minus 6.5 at Michigan State. Just missed it. But I'm more proud of myself for getting this right because after what I did with Kent State last week, that should be studied. Ralph, once again, had the right idea. You can't hate on it. Kansas +2 at West Virginia.
Ralph has picked the winner every week. He just hasn't won against the spread.
Yeah, Ralph's straight up undefeated. It's just in a straight pick 'em. And then we get here where shout out my guy Drew Cronick, former head coach of the Mercer Bears, now the offensive coordinator at Navy. Will, do you want to speak to this? Do you want me to let you talk about this? Because you went Memphis Navy under 50. I vividly remember because, for disclaimer, you were not on the show last week on Thursday when we did this. But you went Memphis Navy under 50, and I don't know if you know, but people in the comments were like, what is he doing? Like, what is this? And this is crazy. Gavin says under 100 would have been a push. Sam getting the hashtag trending fade the booth. Let people into, do you believe that you can come back? I mean, it's 0-5. How do you feel about this?
It's over. It's over. I may not win one the entire year. But what's so crazy about that? Like Memphis Navy under 50, awful. Would have never thought Navy would have covered it by themselves.
That's
just
crazy.
nuts. Gavin we had comments about Army and Navy earlier. That's the national championship game as far as I'm concerned. The playoff
season ends that Army Navy weekend for Will.
The playoffs are relevant. That's the national championship game. Both of these offenses are elite. I blanked on the first name. Bryson Daly, Army's quarterback, Heisman front runner. If that guy doesn't get any Heisman love, not just college football, the country
but they're executing what they do at such a high level. It's ridiculous. They're
smoking everybody. It don't matter who they're playing. They're smoking them. And Navy looks like they're doing the same thing after they did it to Memphis. I don't know that I'm going to win one the rest of the year. But what's so funny about this is I took your lead after all that you said about Kent State, and I liked Penn State minus 48.5. They won 56-0, and the over 55.5. They covered the spread and hit the over by themselves. If I would have taken either one of those, it would have won. And instead, I take a game where they score 100, and I took the under. So I just
brutal.
It's been ugly. It's been a bloodbath, as you can see, with all the red there. I thought Auburn was back, and they lay an egg against Cal.
We had a whole episode.
We thought Pitt was terrible. I thought Tulsa would have more juice getting to host Oklahoma State, and that was just I couldn't be more wrong.
Yeah, you could not literally be more wrong.
It's not that I'm losing. I'm not even getting close. Like I'm not even in the right
look at this
atmosphere on any of these.
You took Florida State minus 10. Georgia Tech won outright. You took Kent State plus 24. That's your closest one.
Yeah, it is.
And still, okay. Cal at Auburn.
And in my defense, that was like a touchdown game in the fourth quarter, and Kent State just like gave up.
Well, Eli Holstein made him want to quit.
Maybe it wasn't a touchdown game, but they were covering in the fourth quarter.
I'm never talking about Kent State on this podcast ever again. Then you took Cal. You took Auburn minus 13.5, and Cal said no, thank you. Oklahoma State at Tulsa. Ralph literally texted me and goes, "I don't know why Will's doing this to himself." And brutal. And you know what you haven't touched, and maybe you need to get back on the right side of the horse. Maybe, Will, you need to go back to an old friend and you need to visit Rutgers. Maybe you need to do it to get one on the board. I don't know.
I think they were my best bet. What, 2 or 3 times last year, and they won every time.
Maybe during your streak. We need to go back and Dr. Bob, do you have the old spreadsheet? Maybe we need to get you to look at the old spreadsheet, and Will needs to go back and look and see who helped him out. Maybe he can get on the right side.
I think my other option might be at this point just to fade Auburn. I think Oklahoma's a 3-point favorite at Auburn right now. Maybe I should just take Oklahoma.
How mad would you be if Auburn just won it outright?
I don't know if I would be mad or not. I don't know if I would be. I think I'd be irritated. I would laugh as far as best bets go, but
yeah,
it's like, how do we beat Oklahoma, who's actually got an elite defense, and we lose by 10 to Arkansas? Like, that should never happen. But don't get me on an Auburn rant.
I'm 2-3. I'm on a 2-game losing streak. Ralph is 3-2. He and I are separated by 1 game, and then obviously Will over there 0-5. But hey, the season is still young. We're still young.
It's over.
He says it's over. Hey, this has been the Crowded Booth. We appreciate you tuning in. Presented by Bet Online. That's where we get all of our spreads. Make sure you use code BELIEVE50 to match up to $50 for your first bet. Make sure you do that responsibly as well. And, man, we appreciate hanging out with you on a Monday evening. We'll be back Wednesday taking a look at Week 5 games. Big one on tap down in Tuscaloosa. That one is, we're going to be joined by Palmer Toms, by the way, and he's going to talk with us. You know, Georgia Tech fan favorite, Palmer Toms, going to hop on for Georgia, Alabama down in T-Town, and then, you know, some other games as well. Will and I will talk a little Oklahoma, Auburn as well, and then it's bye week for Georgia Tech, so that is what it is. Make sure you follow us on all the socials and at thecrowdedbooth.com. Thanks so much for hanging out. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and we'll catch you next time here on The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.